prevention, and you can get testing on site as far as HIV is concerned with instant results. Learn how to give yourself a proper breast exam. It's all happening and taking place at the WVON Family Expo tomorrow. We're going to be at the Kroc Center, 1250 West 119th Street. That's 119th and Truth. Support and take care of the women in your life at the Women's Pavilion. This is brought to you by the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. Listen, you will also be able to purchase Melody Spence Cooper's new book, A Girlfriend's Guide to Closing the Deal. You can only get this book and purchase this book between the hours of 10 a.m. and noon. So make sure you make note of that. Get to the Family Care Expo early. Make sure that you get in so that you can get a copy of Melody Spence Cooper's new book, A Girlfriend's Guide to Closing, only between the hours of 10 a.m. until noon. We'll see you all tomorrow at the Family Care Expo. Now, speaking of the Family Care Expo, of course, we have two of the hosts of the Kendall Moore Show, the Lit Round Table, and all that, all of the above. Now, the Beretta, and also Miss Reese LaFrancois.
Okay, all right, we're gonna work with you.
That was gibberish.
It was.
Don't get me talking about the pastor we was talking about.
Oh, Lord.
Speaking of tongues. Everybody speaking in tongues these days? No.
Oh, God.
Sorry about that. All right.
You're not sorry.
Nonetheless,
Exactly.
though, the Family Care Expo, the Women's Pavilion, we have the opportunity to have some of those fantastic persons who will be in the building tomorrow. Reese, take it away.
All right. So I just want to start off with reading a few stats, okay? And then I'm going to just read a few stats because I want our listening audience to understand why the Women's Health Pavilion is like so important, okay? So here we go. African Americans have the highest mortality rate of any racial and ethnic group for all cancers combined, and for the most major cancers. Death rates for all major causes of death are higher for African Americans than for whites, contributing in part to a lower life expectancy for both African American men and African American women. Okay? HIV and AIDS. Although African Americans represent only 13% of the U.S. population, they account for 44% of HIV infection cases in 2016. African American men are almost 6 times as likely to die from HIV and AIDS as non-Hispanic white men. African American women are almost 18 times as likely to die from HIV and AIDS as non-Hispanic white women. In 2016, African Americans were 8.4 times more likely to be diagnosed with HIV infections as compared to the white population.
Wow.
Okay. Then we have, in 2017, suicide was the second leading cause of death for African Americans ages 15 to 24.
Wow.
And then we have more than one in 3 and 1 in 4 have experienced rape, physical violence by a partner, right?
Yes.
So these are some alarming statistics that we're hearing, especially for African Americans in our community. So what I want to do is I want to have our guest, who's going to be joining us tomorrow on some of the panels. I want you to introduce yourselves and then tell me what you get from that when you hear those type of statistics. What is your mind saying? All right. So I'm gonna start here with Whit. Introduce yourself and then talk a little bit about that.
I will. So hello everyone, my name is Whit Devereaux. I am a domestic violence survivor, advocate, and mentor. And I also have a nonprofit that helps domestic violence survivors to rebuild their lives post-abuse. So hearing those types of statistics, not just the one that you shared about rape, physical violence, and stalking, but even with the suicide and all the other health-related issues is alarming.
Yeah.
And it's impacting us because we don't always talk about these things, especially when it comes to abuse. It's a very taboo subject. There's a lot of stigma around it. So having this expo will really help to provide education, awareness, and exposure, so hopefully we can prevent some of these things from happening in the future.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, our next guest, come on through.
Hello. My name is Lislina Martinez. I go by Lislina Inspires. I am an award-winning author. I am an international inspirational speaker. I am also the founder and creator of Healing is a Journey, which is a quarterly series of conferences that help those who have gone through trauma and abuse start to learn how to live their best healed life. And I'm also a healing and recovery accountability coach. And for me, I'm also a domestic violence survivor. And when I hear that, for me, it's just heartbreaking because I feel a lot of it is because people don't talk about it. There's a lot of shame and stigma and being swept under the rug, and the whole saying where hurt people hurt other people is real. And for me, I'm passionate about exposing that, talking about what happened to you. How can we have this conversation of who can you reach out to? I'm also passionate about getting the mental health that you need, mental health specialists that you need, counseling. Like, you know, in our community, sometimes we talk about go pray about it. Prayer is great, but sometimes seeking help is important too.
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, just when you think about it, I mean, to be on you all too, or what you talk about, I mean, if you say 1 in 3 women have experienced rape, stalking, or some type of physical abuse, that means it's 6 women sitting in this studio right now. That would mean at least 2, which would be, because you said you're a domestic violence survivor, right?
Yes.
Both of you are.
Right.
Right here, we are showing the statistic right now, right? So it's definitely something that has to be talked about, you know? And then even when you talk about the whole mental health, you know, with the stat of suicide being the leading cause
that's really
for
sad.
African American youth ages 15 to 24, right? Because somebody's telling them to go pray about it. Right, so we definitely got to have some real conversations about that. Come on, I want to get our other guest in here, our other panelists. Come on, introduce yourself.
Hello all, my name is Kayla Jones and I am a family nurse practitioner. I also practice in women's health, which is what I'm currently doing right now. I am at a clinic that services underserved population of people, mainly people of color, black and brown. And so what I do on my daily basis is educate our people, and I say our people because they're black and brown, right? And I give them education in regards to preventive care. And so when these statistics are not alarming to me, well, they are alarming, but they're not alarming because of the population of people that I see on a consistent basis. And the biggest component is the lack of education. Along with lack of education is generational curses, in which again we're going to, I believe in God, but we don't want to do anything to prevent.
Right.
So my duty is to constantly educate us so that we can make better decisions, because I feel that in our community, what is so taboo that we do not talk about, there are 2 things. There's finances and then there's healthcare. And the 2 actually, they run hand in hand together. It's a domino effect, because what happens is when your finances fail, then your health fails.
Right.
Absolutely. Right. So when we're stressed out, right, we don't eat right, and so that leads to hypertension, diabetes, kidney disease, and everything else that goes with it. Primarily tomorrow, what I'll be doing is I'll be demonstrating self-breast exams. This month is October, right? And it's Breast Awareness Month, and it's so important on a daily basis. I see black women consistently, and they have been diagnosed with breast cancer. Well, diagnosed with breast cancer as a result of not completing preventive care. So,
because they, you know, there's a saying that says the ER is black people's health care, right? That's our health care program, right?
Yes.
The ER is. Most of us use the ER when we like it gets so bad that we have to go to the ER.
You have to go.
That's our health care plan.
That's real.
Yeah.
And it's very true. However, there are huge health disparities in African, when it comes to people of color, African Americans as well as Hispanics. So we suffer greatly. Any and everything. When you look at all the statistics, we suffer the greatest. And the huge health disparities, I don't know if we can ever conquer it in full, but I can do my part. And if I can't reach everyone, at least I can reach one.
Right.
So that's my goal, to continue nonstop to promote and educate nonstop.
Yeah. So I want to know some of you all's I want to know your backstory, right? Because everybody has a why they're passionate about what they're talking about, right? And a lot of times, what we're passionate about comes from personal stories, right? From personal, either from family that we've seen, our personal lives. So I want you all to talk to me a little bit about your personal why. Why is this so important for you to be able to give this information on tomorrow?
Well, I can start. Much like October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, October is also Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And with me being a survivor, I was molested as a child, as well as I was in abusive relationships as an adult. It's important for me because I made a promise to God that once I was healed, once I was delivered, then I would go back and I would help other people. And so I am just doing what I am purposed to do. This is my mission. It's what keeps me going, because just like Kayla said, if I can't reach everybody, I can at least reach one.
Right.
And so my backstory, like I said, I'm a survivor. It happened when I was 5 by a family member. I didn't talk about it for many years, actually into my late 20s, right before I published my book, Not By My Own, which I had to have that conversation because the book was coming out. I think I neglected to mention that it's an award-winning book, so that meant that a lot of people were going to read it.
Wow.
So I needed to talk about it. And by having those conversations, it helped me to gain strength.
So you hadn't even addressed it with your family?
No,
at that
I had
point?
not.
Oh, wow.
No.
Okay.
I actually had gone through therapy, which, like Lysander said, mental wellness is very important, especially as a survivor. So I had gone through therapy, and my church had a domestic violence ministry. And one of the leaders actually started talking about her testimony, and it was parallel to mine. And that gave me the strength to start talking about it more, and have less shame about it, because it was something that I felt like I was to blame for, even though as a child especially, you don't know anything about that. But it does affect you, and if you don't get the help, it can have many long-lasting effects that are very negative. So because I've gone through the therapy, the healing, the recovery, now I'm at a space where I have the opportunity to help other people who don't have access to that, who might not be comfortable with going to the therapist, but they see me and they can say, oh, well, if she went through it and she overcame it, then I can too.
Because I don't know about you all, but I definitely believe that, domestic violence, abuse, incest, those type of topics are extremely taboo in Black families.
Very much so.
We never want to talk about the uncle who touched, or I've worked with girls for a very long time. My whole back history is working in nonprofit with teenage girls in high school, and I've been privy to girls who were afraid to tell their mothers that a boyfriend or significant other had touched them, because they were afraid that mom was going to choose the man, which we have even seen
that,
right? Mom chose the man over the daughter, right? We've heard those stories. I mean, I don't know if any of you all can, kind of speak to that, but how do we start to bring some of these conversations to the table? Because like even you said, you've written a whole book, and still was not ready to confront your family with that conversation. How does a young woman even negotiate starting to do that? I mean, and then Kayla talked a little bit about the disparities in healthcare. So it's like most of them don't have access to therapy, right? You just got through talking about CPS, Chicago, CPS. So we know the counselors are thin in the schools. So most of them don't have social workers to talk to in the schools. How does a young woman begin to kind of confront that?
So what we have been doing, actually, I'm on a subcommittee with Chicago Police Department, and next week we're going to be going into a high school and talking to the students, and we're going to be doing a training in her shoes, and it's really walking them through being in a victim's shoes from the beginning to the end. So having those conversations, talking to them about warning signs. Sometimes you think that boyfriend who is calling and texting excessively just really likes you a whole lot, but that's really signs of stalking. And is abusive when they are excessively doing it. So teaching them by I've gone into the high schools and talked to the parent advisory council so I can teach the parents like what to look for, giving them information and free resources on Love is Respect and all of these other organizations that are out there that people don't know about. So going into the schools has helped with prevention because a lot of times the kids don't feel comfortable talking to the parents. So I've given them different things that they can text. So there's like a text message that you can text to Love Is, and they can chat with somebody who doesn't know them from Adam, is not going to judge them, but they have the resources directly at hand. So I think what will help people is by going in there. So I'm not a counselor, I'm not a therapist. I do have a social services background. I was in the insurance realm of it as well as the nursing homes. But I do have experience personally being somebody who was abused as a child. And I think by going in there and reassuring them of the warning signs and that there's help available, at least they'll find somebody in there that they can feel comfortable to talk to.
Now, I know, Liz Steiner, so we talked a little bit about prevention. I know you are on the recovery side. So talk to me a little bit about your journey of kind of recovery. What does that look like? What was your own personal story, and how do we begin to take steps to cover?
So my story is a little bit more deeper. It's like my mother was the abuser. She was the one that abused me sexually, physically, emotionally. And so I was one of those kids, like, who do you tell when it's your own mother? So I didn't talk in school. I was in grade school just silent, and even going to high school, it wasn't until I actually got into the group home system where I started to express myself through art and writing. And so that's where the whole being a published author came into play, because I expressed my feelings with writing out the pain and the things I was going through. And so for me, recovery started when I realized that what I was going through was not okay. And that it was not my fault, because I was like, well, how can a mother do this to you? Like, it must be something wrong with me. And so I had to understand that it wasn't me. And so I went through years of therapy. I was suicidal, several attempts. Thank God I did not succeed, but that was because I was hiding in that shame and that pain. And so for me, recovery looks like reaching back and helping other people. Recovery started when I actually forgave my mother. I was obedient to God one night, and he told me to go see her, not knowing that she was on her deathbed. And I was like, and I was scared of her up until my 20s. That's how emotionally
how deep the trauma was.
How deep it was. And so, and that actually opened the doorway for me to get into abusive relationships, because I didn't know what a non-abusive relationship looked like.
Gotcha.
So once I forgave her, it sent me down a path of like, oh, life isn't supposed to be like this. People actually love you, and learning how to take that, and having my children and learning how to say I love you, and giving hugs and receiving that.
Okay, so this is good. This is getting good. This is a great conversation. We got to get ready to take a break. We're going to come back. I'm going to jump right back into the conversation. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. More WVON, the Kendall Moore Show.
Kendall Moore will be right back on the Talk of Chicago, 1690 WVON.
No, you were spot on, because my dad,
I'm
he's
Dr.
still
William.
there.
Excellent.
And I'm running for U.S.
Ladies,
Senate for the state of
I'm sorry, we're
Illinois.
doing the transition.